got some great pictures.
I would like to call the special call meeting of the Milton City Council for Wednesday, June 24, 2015 to order. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the June 24th, 2015 special called meeting. I will waive the reading of the rules this evening and general announcements. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Pro Tem Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Kutz.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Rick Morick.
Here.
And Councilmember Joe Longoria
I'm here.
is calling in and is traveling. For the record, Mayor Joe Lockwood, Councilmember Bill Lusk are absent. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Our next item is approval of the meeting agenda. Agenda item number 15169.
Make a motion, Mayor Pro Tem, that we accept the agenda as prepared by staff.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Morrig and a second by Councilmember Coombs to accept the approval of the meeting agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 There is no opposition. The next item is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Okay, if not, we're going to waive the rules for public comment. Moving on to new business. Will the city clerk sound the item?
Item under new business is consideration of a resolution of the Milton City Council enacting an emergency 30-day moratorium on acceptance of applications for sign permits and enforcement of the city sign ordinance with respect to signs that do not require permits. Agenda item number 15170. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Members of the council, thank you very much, and I want to thank the city manager and the council for agreeing to meet in an expedited and accelerated way with respect to the matter that I'm going to present to you. I will tell you the reason for this meeting today is the Supreme Court's June 18th decision in the case of Reed versus the town of Gilbert, Arizona, when the federal government and Supreme Court makes decisions. Not all the time do they require immediate action by local governments, but sometimes they do. And this is one of those instances where I believe it is the collective belief by most of the practitioners in the area of law that I practice in that this is something we need to bring to your attention right away. So this case, this Reed versus the town of Gilbert case, was a sign case, which of course has First Amendment implications. And it was a case where that city's sign code was ultimately found to be unconstitutional based upon the Supreme Court declaring that it is not content neutral. And I want to bring some matters with respect to that case to your attention. Interestingly, the focus of the opinion by the Supreme Court is actually not what the sign permitted, which is interesting. It's actually what the sign exempted, the sign code exempted from being permitted. So automatically, already you can sort of see an interesting peculiarity about the case. But in particular, there were three categories of signage that did not require permits under this sign code that caught the court's attention, and they were called, one was called an ideological sign, one was called a political sign, and one was called a temporary directional sign. Now, in the common vernacular, many people think that content neutral would mean, let's go to this ideological sign. Let's say that there was a sign category in Gilbert that said under the ideological signs you can only demonstrate or convey messages that have a conservative bent, or if there was an ideological sign that says they could have a left-leaning bent. I think anybody here and most individuals would say, well, clearly that's content-based. It's viewpoint specific. It's attempting to further, the government's attempting to impose its will to cause a particular viewpoint to be advanced, and that's unconstitutional. Well, that's not what these signs did. These signs, for instance, this ideological sign is a sign communicating a message or ideas for non-commercial purposes that is not a construction sign or directional sign. Okay, let me go to a political sign. A political sign is a temporary sign designed to influence the outcome of an election. Understand that while those identifiers did in fact attempt, to the best the English language can do it, to identify the sort of message that is on the sign, it did not dictate the viewpoint of the message. Do you understand? It just, for instance, a political sign was a sign designed to influence the outcome of an election. However, the Supreme Court has now ruled.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Longoria, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. So let's move the call.
Okay. Councilmember Longoria, can you hear me better now?
I can. It must have been where the phone was located.
In any event, the point being is that even though those categories of signage did not attempt to influence the viewpoint, I think there can be little question that at least they do attempt to characterize in some manner, even in a benign way, the content that had to be in the sign. And the court took a very, very narrow reading and declared that because they contained some language, even though it was viewpoint neutral, dictating the sorts of message that had to be in the sign, that therefore it was content neutral and it is subject to what's called the highest level of constitutional scrutiny, which is strict scrutiny, which means that the reason for that content-based signage had to advance a compelling governmental interest and had to be the most narrow method by which to advance that interest. Almost no government regulation can withstand that sort of scrutiny, nor did the city of Gilbert, and therefore it was stricken. Because of the way the Supreme Court has advanced and sort of characterized this, it has forced everyone to kind of go back to their sign code, because I think all practitioners understood your sign code can advance and suggest a viewpoint, but there are and is language in sign codes that attempts to restrict the message on the sign to at least some sort of an objective. Perhaps Milton's has that as well, and other jurisdictions may have that as well. And so what is considered to be the most appropriate response to that? Place a moratorium on your code. Go back and look at it. See if it needs to be modified, and if it does, bring it back to you. We all know sort of the thing we're trying to prevent against, and that is, of course, individuals coming in with multiple, for instance, billboard applications, submitting the billboard applications to the city. We deny them under our code, and then they challenge the entirety of our sign code under this new case, saying it's unconstitutional. Now give me my billboard applications, or give me my billboard permits. Milton is no stranger to that sort of thing, but of course you inherited those from Fulton County, if you may recall. But we certainly don't want to have that to happen again if we can prevent it. So it's not just this jurisdiction, but others are attempting to do this moratorium. I will be very candid with you. I know that moratoriums are not popular. I know a lot of jurisdictions don't like to do them, and I certainly know that no one has an interest in affecting or harming business. I get that. This is not being driven by you. It's my request to you. But I also want to be smart and try to give the best advice I can give. The moratorium resolution that I have in front of you is different than what was in your published book. The moratorium that I have in front of you basically does this. Number one, it would bar for 30 days, and you know that we typically do moratoriums in two steps. We do a very quick one, an emergency one, and then if we're going to do a long one, we'll then advertise a public hearing and do a longer one. But for right now, this is in the nature of an emergency moratorium. It would bar for 30 days it would bar for 30 days, first of all, the acceptance of any applications for sign permits in Milton. It would also bar for 30 days the erection of any signage in Milton, because remember, in the Reed case, it wasn't what was permitted that was stricken, it was what was exempted from permitted that was stricken. So we would bar the acceptance of applications, we would bar any erection of signage, and then, as I have discussed with the city manager, as my thinking has sort of evolved over this matter over the last couple of days, I have tried to place in what I call a stopgap. You have in the Milton Sign Code something called a temporary standard informational sign that is a non-permitted sign that is available in all districts. It is totally non-content based, and this moratorium would still allow citizens, business owners, whomever, to still erect that sort of sign even during the moratorium. as I mentioned to Chris, my concern was I would not, in my haste to try and make sure our sign code is constitutional, absolutely shut down every mechanism for speech in the city without some sort of a stopgap measure, which is why I left that very narrow opportunity in there during the moratorium period. Otherwise, what we would do if this moratorium is adopted is we would immediately run to your code and begin to look at it line by line, do our best to come up with a recommendation to the city manager and ultimately to the council as to what would pass constitutional scrutiny in light of the Reed opinion, and then give you a recommendation of how to change the code. It is my expectation that if I come back to you and we do have to do code modifications, that we may have to do a longer moratorium, but I would attempt to narrowly tailor it such that whatever is going to be subject to a longer moratorium is only that which is the minimum necessary to get us where we need to be to where I can adopt modifications to our code. The recommendation I'm making is a recommendation, candidly, that other lawyers in Georgia are making. In fact, the attorneys that actually litigated this case, some of them are from Georgia, and they have made a similar recommendation of a moratorium. Another jurisdiction that I work in passed this variation on this moratorium last night. So that's my recommendation to you. This is not a situation of your creation. It is simply a situation that you've got to address or respond to. So I'll take any questions.
Could so obviously, and that was kind of my question, what you mentioned about was the moratorium in and of itself. Can a moratorium really have any teeth with the Supreme Court ruling?
Yes, I can, I believe it can. I mean, the moratorium is a procedural construct that's basically meant to put a stop or a status quo with respect to the ability both to apply for signage, et cetera. So the concern would be that if someone particularly could come in and submit an application and they sort of got you then. Once the application's in, the law I think is fairly clear that they are entitled to the benefit of whatever the law is when they submit that application. If there's a moratorium in place, can't submit that application. That's a fairly safe place for us to be.
Even if the way I'm just in my own mind, I'm thinking about it, if someone were to submit an application and we have a moratorium in effect.
Yes.
But could we, according to the Supreme Court ruling, effectively deny them the application in the short term, not just...
Right. The key, the beauty of a moratorium is that we would not be denying them an application or denying them a permit. We are simply declining to even accept them for a period of 30 days. And that's the benefit of the breathing room it gives us.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure that was clear.
In the case of, let's say, new business, someone's opening up their business, can they still put out a new sign like the banners or something when someone's opening up?
Right.
So I know we have one business that I think is going to be opening this Saturday. I don't know if they've already.
If they have an application in progress, in other words, they've already tendered a signed permit application to the city, and that permit in the ordinary course is being processed now, and the permit issues, let's say, tomorrow, this moratorium specifically says they can still erect that during the moratorium period because they got in the hopper before this was imposed.
But if they had not already submitted that application, they wouldn't even be eligible to put a banner like, now open for business or something like that.
Right. Once this is imposed, the only signage they could erect would be this temporary standard informational sign, which is the only stopgap. Keeping in mind, Councilmember Morag, the very concern you're raising is the reason that we will work very quickly on this, because I know that it's no one's intention to harm business.
And what does the standard informational sign look like again?
It's fairly small. Chris, is it the 4x4? Yeah, it's a 4x4, fairly small. That'd be about 16 square.
The one thing I want to clear up too is just so that it captures when Ken was describing the temporary standard informational sign. After he used that, he said is not permitted, and what he meant by saying that is that it doesn't require a permit to be put out. So they are permitted. They just don't have to have a sign permit.
Right. They can be erected, but they do not require a formal application and permit process.
Because they're temporary and they're a smaller sign.
That's correct. It's totally just a method by which we are trying to tell the citizens of Milton, look, you can still speak. We're not trying to shut you down entirely, but we've got to do this.
So someone could do a 4x4 now open for business, or, put their business name on.
Two by two.
Two by
Two by
so it's a
two.
2 by 2, so it's like almost what's allowed for us. So 4 square feet
Yes.
total surface area. So it's like campaign sign size.
Right.
Okay.
It's
I'm going
small.
to pull up the definition. I'm pulling it up right now for you so that I can read you.
It's really small.
It's in 642302.
Yeah, there is.
Say that again. Ken.
642302 is the actual.
While he's pulling that up, do we have any additional questions for the city attorney?
And that was a question, I think, that's a good question, Bill. You just mentioned
Yeah,
the number of signs could be put up. Is that still limited, or?
I know it was limited.
As soon as Chris reads it, I thought
Like,
it
could you
maybe
put, like,
might have been one per lot.
G is in one sign, R is another, A is
No.
another.
I think it's limited.
Each individual resident gets 3, and then there's something with respect to. Is this the one where there's something with respect to during election periods?
I'm going to read from our code, if I can. Temporary standard informational signs. Each lot and/or development may display one standard informational sign not exceeding 4 square feet without a permit, except that during a political election or referendum between the date of qualification of the candidate or the referendum question and the final determination on each ballot issue or candidate, each lot may display an unlimited number of standard informational signs. All such signs shall be removed within 7 calendar days. So that goes out to speak to the size and number allowed.
It's a modest accommodation.
Do we have any additional questions? If not,
And Councilmember, thank you. If the council does wish to make a motion, I simply wish that you would, if you're going to do that, reference the resolution that was passed out by the city clerk this evening, as opposed to the one that may have been provided in your packet.
In the resolution that you did change, I did upload it on the iPad, so it's the most recent.
Good.
And I also put it on the website, so any citizen or reporter looking at it will see what we're speaking of right
what
now.
we're actually
Yes,
voting on.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Do we have a motion?
Hang on just a second, if you don't mind. Okay, all right. I thought I had an idea, but I don't. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure before you made a motion.
It was a good idea,
I was
too.
asking a question. Well, I thought it was a good idea.
It was a good idea. Yeah.
Possible. So, sometimes you have good ideas that you just can't
So
make.
you did have an idea.
It's just not a good one.
Right.
Don't you hate it when the attorneys get in the way of a good idea?
That's right. That's right.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 15170, consideration of a resolution of the city of, the Milton City Council enacting an emergency 30-day moratorium on acceptance of applications for sign permits and enforcement of the city sign ordinance with respect to signs that do not require permits. And that resolution is the one that was handed out to us this evening.
Right. So, Councilmember Hewitt, thank you for that. But that's the language you just read is from the old version. That's
Oh, okay.
right.
So
Forgive
I need to
me.
use this time?
This one.
Please,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so let's just.
A do-over.
Withdraw that.
Over.
Start over.
I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 15170, a resolution of the city of the Milton City Council enacting an emergency 30-day moratorium on acceptance of applications for sign permits and otherwise prohibiting the erection of signs that do not require a permit except for temporary standard information signs.
Thank you.
Second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt and a second by Councilmember Moore to approve the resolution as revised and handed out at the council meeting and updated on the city website. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? The motion carries. That concludes the regular meeting, or the special call meeting. Is there a motion that we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries.